Okay, let's see here. Got all my stuff. First, before I take off my mask, I hope you'll all look at it, and I hope you all did what it says. Vote. We're urging all Americans who have elections to vote. Now, I want to thank Senators Durbin, Leahy, Klobuchar, and Warnock, four people who have done just amazingly steadfast work on voting rights. They and many more, including Senator Manchin, have been working overtime to craft the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and find common ground with our Republican colleagues. I know it's been an exhausting process, but one that is so important. Last night, I began the process for the Senate to hold a vote on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It's a common sense proposal to reinstate the pre-clearance provisions of the Voting Rights Act, which has had a long history of bipartisan support in the Senate. Elections are the wellspring of democracy. But across the country, we're witnessing a coordinated assault on the right to vote and even on how elections are conducted, tallied, and potentially decided. This is a true threat to the ultimate foundation of our democracy, a true threat. In the Shelby decision, unfortunately, a conservative majority on the Supreme Court struck down the pre-clearance requirements, the heart of the Voting Rights Act, wrongly suggesting it was no longer needed. We've seen how much it's needed since. Boy, were they wrong. In the years since the Shelby decision, the floodgates have opened for some of the most draconian restrictions to disenfranchise voters since the era of segregation. For months, the Senate Democrats have worked to build bipartisan support for the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We've sought common ground with Republicans on the critical issue of protecting the freedom to vote. We've urged Senate Republicans to engage with us, offer their ideas, work together to guarantee free and fair elections. At every single turn, we were met with resistance, with almost every Republican pretending like there is no problem, ostriches with their heads in the sand. They seem happy to ignore the flood of anti-democratic legislation sweeping across the country. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is a chance for bipartisanship and to repair the damage caused by Donald Trump's big lie and restore the faith in democracy. Democrats are ready to work with Republicans in good faith if they vote to begin a debate on voting rights tomorrow. The Senate's already voted on more amendments than any full year under President Trump. We've offered them an open amendment process, just as they say the Senate ought to work, just as we say the Senate ought to work. But what Republicans shouldn't do and mustn't do is squelch any chance for the Senate to debate something this critical and sacrosanct as the right to vote. If there's any issue that deserves debate in the chamber, it should be protecting voting rights. Since Republicans say they want more bipartisanship, we're ready to give it to them. They have another opportunity for a bipartisanship tomorrow when we will begin to debate. I hope they'll take our offer. Simply standing silent with their arms crossed, refusing to allow the Senate to function is unacceptable. And now I have an important announcement on progress for the President's agenda. I'm pleased to announce that an agreement has been reached to lower prescription drug prices for seniors and families in the Build Back Better legislation. Fixing prescription drug pricing has consistently been a top issue for Americans year after year, including the vast majority of both Democrats and Republicans who want to see a change because they simply cannot afford their medications. We've heard this from people across the country who have serious illnesses and can't afford their medicine. What a painstaking position to be in. It's horrible. Today, we've taken a massive step forward in helping alleviate that problem. By empowering Medicare to directly negotiate prices in Part B and Part D, this deal will directly reduce out-of-pocket drug spending for millions of patients every time they visit the pharmacy or doctor. It will cap out-of-pocket spending at $2,000 per year, ending the days where a life-changing diagnosis could mean thousands upon thousands of dollars in new expenses. And it will reform the entire industry to stop price gouging and it will reform the entire industry to stop price gouging and change both drug company and health insurer incentives to make sure our country's drug pricing system benefits patients, not corporations. I want to thank many of my colleagues who worked on this. Senator Klobuchar, who was here, Senators Wyden, Murphy, Cortez Masto, Bennett, and Kelly. Senators Shaheen, Hassan, and Smith for their leadership on insulin. The price from insulin will go down from $600 an injection or a dose to $35, whereas where it should always have been if we would have had proper laws in place. And Senator Sinema has told me she supports this agreement, so I think we're there. It's not everything we all wanted. Many of us would have wanted to go much further, but it's a big step in helping the American people deal with the price of drugs. And finally, Senator Wyden has done years of work on this issue and helped develop many of the proposals in this package. Senator Leahy.
Thank you. First off, for anybody who's faced children or family or anything else, medical costs, Mr. Leader, that's tremendous news, and I'm delighted to hear it. You know, we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, something that's passed virtually unanimously over the years, signed into law by a Republican president, supported by everybody. Can you imagine anything more ridiculous than if senators who are elected to come here and vote, senators would say, no, we're going to block voting on the Voting Rights Act. These things seems like something out of a Saturday Night Live comedy script. Unfortunately, it's real, and nobody should be able to stand up and justify to the American people, we want to stop people from voting on the Voting Rights Act. There's only 100 of us. Don't we have the courage to vote? Don't we have the courage to say what we're for or what we're not? I voted nearly 17,000 times in this body. I believe in standing up and voting. So I hope that every member of the Senate, Republican and Democrat, will look at what we've been able to accomplish and let us debate the bill, open it up, have votes up or down, have a real debate. If you don't allow a debate on the Voting Rights Act, if you don't allow the Senate to vote on people's right to vote, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're violating every reason for being here. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Senator Durbin. Go ahead, Dick. Sorry. I had you had
wish
enough
you had
room.
heard that.
The year was 1964. One of the most important pieces of civil rights legislation in the century came before the United States Senate. It's interesting for a moment to look at the cloture vote in 1964 on June 10th. In favor of that cloture vote were some 71 senators. They included 27 Republican senators who voted for cloture, only 6 voting no. And on the Democratic side, 44 voting for cloture, 23 voting no. The reason I hearken back to that moment in history was the Civil Rights Bill clearly would not have cleared cloture without the support of Republicans and Democrats. It was consistent with the party of Abraham Lincoln, the party of the Republicans, that they would be in support of the civil rights legislation, and in all candor, the greatest resistance to that legislation came from the Democratic side, the Southern Democrats at that moment. I only say that to remind all of us that this has been a bipartisan issue in this important debate in modern times, and it should be again. Tomorrow we are asking the Republicans to join us in just opening debate. That's all we're asking. Let us open the debate on the Voting Rights Act, and then I think we've got an opportunity, maybe, to restore the bipartisan support we've had for this important civil rights legislation. The larger question is, if they won't, who is their leader now? If it isn't Lincoln as their inspiration, who is their inspiration when it comes to civil rights? I'll let them answer that question. But we have work to do, and I want to make sure that we do everything we can. We're reaching out to the Republican senators in the hopes that we can find some common ground, and I think we can. You wonder why, with everything else going on in reconciliation and BIF and all the other things, why we talk about voting, because that is central and that is basic to who we are and why we're here.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Senator Schumer. So why we talk about voting? Because you are standing in the very place, sitting in the very place where these insurrectionists went through this Capitol, where they went into the Senate floor. And sadly, people may not be using bear spray, or they may not be using flagpoles, but they are suppressing the vote all over this country. It is a concerted effort, a concerted plan, just like the insurrection. We had a hearing last week in the Rules Committee with a Republican election official from the city of Philadelphia, also the Arizona Secretary of State. They told us horrifying stories of them getting threats. The Philadelphia Republican elected official isn't going to run again because his family, his family's children called out by name, pictures of their house put on the internet. Arizona Secretary of State called out, Katie, Katie, we're going to hunt you down. That's what's going on in this country right now. And our number one job as U.S. senators is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. We cannot do that if our democracy crumbles. So that is what this is all about today. Senator Durbin talked about how this has been bipartisan in the past. Why? Because we all believe in our democracy. All these debates we're having about the bill to bring down costs for families, about the infrastructure bill, that's all because we have a democracy. It's not always pretty. It takes a while. Back 100 years ago, they didn't have tweets every 5 minutes about what was going on and people talking about everything that gets on the news 10 minutes later. Okay, we're in a different environment, but it's because we have a democracy. So that's why this bill is so important. Raphael Warnock will tell you what's going on. That bill that passed in Georgia, that means no one can vote in a runoff period during the weekends. That means no one can register during their important runoff period in Georgia. That's why major corporations have come out against that bill. You've seen what happened in Texas when in the last election, one drop-off box in the entire county of Harris County, which includes Houston, the size of my state. You've seen the voters stand out in makeshift masks and garbage bags in the rain in Wisconsin, all to exercise their right to vote. So what the John Lewis bill is about is making sure that their constitutional rights are protected. You add that to the Freedom to Vote Act, which puts in the minimal standards which we are clearly allowed to do under the Constitution that says Congress can make or alter the election laws. That's what this is about. And that's where we're standing right now. They started the work there, and we're not going to let them finish it because we are going to pass a voting bill one way or another. And I do want to commend our colleagues that have worked on this, so many of them, and we are excited that we're moving this bill and getting some bipartisan support. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar, who is leader of the Rules Committee, has done just great work on this issue. Senator Warnock, who has also done great work on this issue.
The single most important thing that this 117th Congress can do is to pass voting rights. Voting rights are preservative of all other rights, and tomorrow we will offer to have a debate on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. That's the right name, John Lewis. John Lewis is not just a figure in a history book, he is our hero. And I'm proud to say that he was my parishioner. I went with him on more than one occasion for souls to the polls. We went to vote on Sunday after church because voting is a sacred undertaking. A vote is a kind of prayer for the world we desire for ourselves and for our children. This is not just a political moment, it's a moral moment for America. And so we ask our Republican colleagues to at least agree to have a debate on voting rights. This John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act carries the lessons of John Lewis's legacy. Namely, it reestablishes the important tool of preclearance. The Supreme Court asked the Congress to fix preclearance in 2013, and all of these years later, we've yet to do it. And so it's time for us to get it done. It's past time. In fact, we've got to get voting rights achieved in this Congress. The American people are counting on us. The Freedom to Vote Act puts the fire out. In this 9/11 state of emergency in our democracy, the Freedom to Vote Act puts the fire out. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is about building a fire station for future fires. And we wouldn't be dealing with some of these terrible draconian measures in Georgia right now if preclearance were on the books. And so let's get this done. And we don't mind that Republicans don't agree with us on all of the nuances of these laws. We're just saying, let's have a debate. How can the most important deliberative body on the planet refuse to have a debate? Everybody's talking about the division among the American people and in our politics. Here's where we agree. Both Democrats and Republicans agree that there's something broken in our democracy. Well, if there's something broken, let's go on the floor of the United States Senate and talk about what that is. The American people deserve no less.
Questions? Oh, boy. Go ahead, way back there. Look, we're fighting, a whole lot of us. Senator Warren and I, Congresswoman Presley in the House, have been pushing the White House very, very hard on this issue. We think it's the right thing to do, and we're making good progress. Yes?
Parliamentarian rules against an immigration provision. Do you think the Democrats in the Senate should vote to overturn her decision? Do you have a vote?
We are working right now very hard to take immigration issues to the parliamentarian. I'm not going to comment on what will happen afterwards, but we hope that she will see things in the way that we want them to. We feel very strongly that we have to do things about immigration, the Dreamers, and so many others, and all the other workers. Yes.
Do you intend to wait until you have a CBO score to bring the Build Back Better Act to the floor?
You have to have a CBO score to go into let me go over the timing. Sure. So first, there is the scrub, the privilege scrub. You can't do that till the whole bill is ready in the House. They have to pass the whole bill. That takes about a week because it's a 2,000-page bill. While we already have some text of, I think, 7 committees, the vast majority of the legislation is in committees that haven't gotten it ready yet. So it takes about a week, and that's what we'll do next week, the upcoming week. During the recess week, we couldn't do anything anyway. But we hope the House to pass it soon, and hope to begin debate on it on the 15th after the parliamentary scrub, and then, of course, there are the bird rule contests as well. Okay, yes?
Just to follow up on that, have you made a decision on whether you will put the debt limit in the reconciliation
Look.
package? Secretary Yellen has indicated she's okay with Democrats being in.
We think it should be bipartisan. I'm still appalled. There's no better, I have deep, I'm going to make up a word, deep appallment that it's my daughter. When she calls, I get a little nervous sometimes. I won't say why, but it's good. But in any case, we have deep appallment that they would play games even with this. This is just something unprecedented, where 3 times we voted to raise the debt ceiling under Trump. So we believe it should be bipartisan. We will hope that Republicans will come to their senses and do just that.
Leader Schumer. Is Senator Sinema on board with the pharmaceutical?
She has said, yes, she told me a half hour ago that she was, and the White House told us they were as well. Thank you, everybody.